Hey everybody, this is Dream, and we have a nice little three-game slate today. Doesn't come without a bunch of injuries, but it is a small little slate. So my team picks today are going to be Boston over Oklahoma City, Milwaukee over Washington, and Utah over Sacramento. Overall, though, the slate is not very good. I would tread lightly if you're playing, and I would probably steer clear of FanDuel all the way. The pricing over there is a little bit higher than it is on DraftKings for a lot of guys, and it really just doesn't look very playable at all. I mean, you have some guys that are up to $1,000 more expensive there, which it's been kind of that way for a few weeks, or for the last week or so, but overall, it's just not very playable the way it is. Let's go ahead and get into the injury report, though. We will be giving you my top plays for both sites here. For the injury report for the Wizards, Beal is questionable. Obviously, if he's out again, that opens up a lot for the Wizards, but we have to wait and see. For the Bucks, Middleton is out. For the Celtics, Robert Williams is questionable. For the Thunder, Pokovitsky and Robinson Earl are both out. For the Kings, Hooter and Monk, sorry about butchering your name, are both questionable. And then Jazz, Sexton is out, which really opens up some options in the guard position for upscale team. I also have the Sacramento-Utah game being the fastest paced game on this particular slate by quite a bit, actually. And so I expect that those two teams are going to be the high scoring game on the slate. And you'll see that reflected because I have a lot of Jazz players and our write-ups here. Now, I do have two players on my core plays here, and that is Josh Giddey and Mike Conley, so we'll start talking about them. So Conley's been playing pretty well lately, and with Sexton out, he's going to have even a little bit more upside as a result. He should shoot the ball a little bit more, and his minutes should be nice and full in the mid-30s. I expect him to have a solid game here, and his price point is actually pretty fair here on DraftKings. And then we're going to look at Josh Giddey, who has been playing very well for Oklahoma City lately. His price has actually come down here, back down to 6,700, which it typically doesn't get this low. As you can see, for most of the season, it's hovered around 7,000 or so. And he's been playing pretty well lately and pretty consistent as well. So I expect him to have a pretty solid game today. He's got a tough matchup here against Boston, but overall, he's been playing well enough that I think he's a viable option on the slate. And he's one of the more consistent players in the last 10 or 15 games that I could find on the slate overall. Then we're going to look at, let's clear this here, Jordan Clarkson here, for Utah. He has been playing pretty well lately. His price point has popped up a little bit more than I'd like it to be, but he's still on a short slate with a bunch of, with a guy that's, got a guy at his position that's injured. He's going to have more opportunity, more minutes, and I expect him to play well in this matchup. Then we're going to look at Malik Beasley for the Jazz as well. He's also in a nice spot here. He's actually been playing pretty well lately, and his price has actually come down as well. So his minutes are a little bit uneven throughout the season, but I expect him to have a bigger game today with Conley out, and I expect him to play well in it, especially in a faster-paced environment. Then we're going to look at Kelly Olynyk for Utah as well. He's been playing a little bit inconsistent lately, which is a little bit of a concern, but his price point has come down here, which is good, and he has some nice upside in this matchup with that price point. Then we're going to look at Grant Williams for Boston, and assuming that Robert Williams is out, Grant Williams will step in and get more minutes. Obviously, his price point has popped down all the way to 3,500, so he's nearly minimum priced. And he really hasn't had too many games under 15 fantasy points, which makes him viable on the slate. And he does have a little upside where he can get up to around 30 fantasy points if he has a good game. And so he has some decent range in this one, especially with not too many big guys available for the Thunder themselves. Then we're going to look at Al Horford, who's in a similar position where he plays around 30 minutes a game. Now since he's been back from his injury, he hasn't really had a bigger game, but overall he has some upside here and in this matchup, and I expect him to have some try to get back to where he's scoring around 25 to 35 per game, and his price points actually come down here, so that's actually nice as well. And then we're going to look at Giannis, who is the big play on the slate. He is probable today, but I do expect him to play but obviously we want to keep track. He's had 2 really crazy games in a row with 84 and 81 fantasy points. He obviously has massive upside at times, and he, gets plenty of opportunity. He's been rebounding the ball extremely well the last couple games, and the Wizards do like to shoot a lot of jump shots, so I expect that to continue in this particular matchup. So we'll have to see if he ends up for certain playing, so keep an eye on that, but he is viable on the slate. And then I'm going to mention Malik Monk as well, because he is questionable, but if he ends up playing, he is a viable option on the slate. His price has also come down some, which is nice, and gives him some upside on this particular slate. So let's go ahead and get over to FanDuel, and we're going to start with Mike Conley here. Now, Mike Conley's price here is over almost, I think, $1,000 more than, no, sorry, it's about $500 more than it is on DraftKings. And it makes him a little bit harder to roster because he needs almost 30 fantasy points to 5x here. But he has plenty of minutes available today, and he should be able to get there, but he's just not as good as DraftKings option version of himself. Then Jordan Clarkson's virtually the same price, and so he has some nice upside here on FanDuel. He's been playing pretty well lately, and I think he'll have a big game here against Sacramento. Then we'll look at Malik Beasley, who at $4,800, he's about the same price as well, a couple $100 more. He's got some upside here. He has had some big games this season, and I expect him to have some opportunity here in this particular matchup. Then we're going to look at Marcus Smart for Boston. Marcus, sorry about that. Against Oklahoma City. He's had some big games lately, but his floor is pretty low, so do keep that in mind in the low 20s. But his price point is still about where it's been for a little while, and it's a plus matchup, and so there's just not a lot of shooting guards available to choose from, and he's somebody that I would definitely take a look at on this particular slate. Giannis, obviously a good option on the slate. He's had 2 really massive games. His price point isn't ideal, obviously, because it's so high. But he has a pretty good floor, and he's been playing well. He also set out the last game against Washington, so I expect him to come back here and play really good in this one. And then Jaylen Brown here for the Celtics. Now, it's not really his game because he seems to rotate games when he does big ones, but he's been playing pretty well lately, and he should have a good matchup here against Oklahoma City, where he'll have a good opportunity to continue to play well as a result of the matchup. Then we'll look at Domantas Sabonis. Now, his price point has popped up quite a bit here on FanDuel, but he is a little bit cheaper, actually, than DraftKings, I think. So he is viable on the slate. He's had some really big games lately, though his minutes have been a little bit lower the last couple games, or at least the last game, because of, I think he did take a game off a few games ago due to an injury or something, so I expect him to have a really big game, though, here at this price point. And then Kelly Olynyk, now his price point is almost $1,000 more than it is on DraftKings, but he's still viable here. He has 35, 40 fantasy point upside, and I expect him to play a lot in this matchup against Sacramento, who doesn't really have anybody that can guard him that much. The center position for the Kings is kind of hit and miss lately, and so I expect him to have a solid game in this matchup. With that said, guys, thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below, and have a nice day, guys.